Hello, welcome to The Print. Today we are joined by a very eminent personality, a seasoned politician, a senior advocate, and now the president of the Supreme Court Bar Association, Mr. Kapil Sibal. I would like to add one more line to your introduction. Now you're also hosting a very popular show called Dil Se Kapil. He has his own YouTube channel where you will get to see some candid conversation that revolve around interesting political issues. Welcome to the Prince, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Since we are meeting you immediately a day after the results were announced for the Lok Sabha elections, I would like to know your first reaction to the results, particularly because you have mentioned that this is the defining moment in the history of India's democracy. And you also say that now India should start talking about TIFA instead of TINA.
That's right.
Yeah, so could you just say?
TIFA stands for there is a federal alternative. TINA stood for there is no alternative. And the India Alliance has actually proven that there is a federal alternative. And the other thing I said was that henceforth, and this is my prediction, you will only have coalition governments in India. And the reason is quite obvious, that this republic is a coalition. It's a coalition of interests. Ultimately, it's a coalition of castes. It's a coalition of communities. It's a coalition of races, right? And the kind of diversity that we have in India, which is embedded in 140 crore people, you can't run that from Delhi without a coalition. And if you do it, you will end up, at the end of 10 years, in the state that Modi has ended up in. Because if you run the country on the basis of your own will, your own diktat, with the PMO at the center, don't give power to your own ministers, direct the policies of the government without consultation in parliament, then, this will be the fate of that. And this has happened in the past. This is not the first time. This has happened in the past. When Mrs. Gandhi tried to do that, you see what happened. And the most successful governments in this country have been coalition governments, starting from Narasimha Rao.
So that's what I was about to come to. That do you think coalition governments are better for India's democracy?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
Why do you say so?
For the simple reason that there is a quid pro quo, there is a discussion. You debate issues. You get another person's point of view. Here, you don't even debate the issues in parliament. Forget it, sending to the standing committee, bill to the standing committee. You see, a family, if it has to be successful, has to also be a coalition. Look at any business family in this country. Whoever has tried to control the family, that family has always disrupted. You see fight between brother and brother, right? So all families will be, businesses will be decimated unless you have the interest of all stakeholders in mind, consider those interests and take a decision in the best interest of that family. And that family, if you extrapolate it to the nation, is the community of interests that reside within castes and communities and religious, linguistic in this country.
So what is the defining moment? Is it India getting back to coalition form of government?
No, India was always a coalition. The aberration was.
Okay, so you call the last 10 years an aberration.
And earlier. And earlier, when you had a majority government, which ultimately, you know what happened to it. So, in fact, these two are aberrations. Otherwise, coalitions have always been successful. And when Nehru was there, to the 3 terms that he was there, that was a coalition of sorts, because he would sit in parliament on a day-to-day basis. He would listen to everybody. He would encourage dissent, right? He would accept parliamentary norms. For him, the opposition was as important as the government, right? And he had been bred within the Congress culture, which itself was a coalition. So you cannot now compare Nehru's rule, which is a majority rule, because it was essentially a coalition of ideas, even though there was a majority. And he respected dissent.
So you praised the Congress for reaching out to the federal units and forming a coalition, even before the elections. So, are you in any way suggesting that Congress is a better party to lead a coalition government?
No, I'm not suggesting any of that. I'm just saying that governance cannot be done without taking on board the diverse interests that make this republic. And that can only be done. Now, it happens that the Congress party is a national party. It has a footprint all over the country. It also happens that the BJP is a national party. But the BJP must also realize that if you start polarizing the communities and don't take care of the interest of every citizen of this country, that citizen may represent a whole community. He may represent a whole caste. If you don't do that, then there will be dissension. There will be, if you have farm laws without a discussion, there'll be, the kind of morchas that you saw happening.
But that is
country.
Lack of discussion and debate.
Yes.
So, I mean, you can always do that even if you have a party in power which has brute majority.
That never happens. The culture of a brute majority is to be brutal in your decision making.
Okay.
That's the culture of a brute majority. You see the history of the world, you will find that. Right? So that's the way it is. Because you think you have the power, so you think this is right. You may be right also. You think this is right, you may be wrong. You don't listen to anybody, right? And you decide to do it, notwithstanding opposition. And you may well think that what you're doing is right. And the other side may not know what you're doing is right. If you don't have a discussion, they will suspect that what you're doing is not right. And you will land yourself in trouble.
But then let's talk about stability of a coalition government.
Oh, in fact, just the opposite. It's just the opposite. Stability means what? Stability of policy making. What is stability of policy making? Coalition. Policy making will only be stable if you listen to everybody.
But doesn't it really lead to appeasement also? Because you need to keep all your partners
what
happy.
Do you mean by
in
appeasement?
the sense that if you have one party which is a national party.
Isn't it a good thing? Isn't it a good thing? That you should keep in your organization the reporter happy, the person who is in charge of the reporter happy, the head of the organization happy, all your cameramen happy, right? You have to, otherwise they'll just leave you. That's the nature of living, right? Mm-hmm. How do you treat your own children? To make them happy and yet guide them. If you don't care about them, they'll revolt. I've seen that happening in families before my eyes. Just learn from the animal world. Just learn from lions and lionesses and their cubs.
You have also spoken about, Nitish and Naidu respecting the federal structure, and yes. you also say that they have maintained it.
That's correct.
But now they're joining BJP.
I don't know that. I mean, at the moment, I don't know.
At the moment, yeah.
Let's assume.
But what are your hopes from both these political leaders?
No, you see, the great thing about this coalition, if it happens, is that they are leaders of states, right? And they have won majorities in states.
Yeah.
Of course, Nitish is not, but Chandrababu Naidu has. And they left state governments for years.
Right.
So they know where the interests of the states lie, right? Now, the center has been following a policy of pick and choose, of selective hand-holding. So wherever there are BJP governments, where there's the double-engine sarkar, they will handhold. Wherever there is an opposition government, they will do what they have done in Bengal, what they have done in Kerala, what they are doing in Tamil Nadu. The governors are their agents. They destabilize governments, right? The elected governments of the states. Have you ever seen in any democracy that an elected government is just taken over through money power? So
I think you're referring to the rift between Kerala government and central.
No, there's a rift between Bengal and also.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the power, the CBI now registering cases in Bengal after the consent has been withdrawn. You have a PMLA in which you don't need consent.
Yeah.
Right? So these are very, very serious issues. Now, unless you discuss it with states, you destroy the federal structure, and states will not accept it. States will not accept it. So these are very serious federal issues. And I think now, I have reached this conclusion after years and years of studying how the structure works, that unless you give more power to the states, this republic can never deliver for the people. So you need to let go. That's just like in a family. You let the child say, okay, now, you know, you're on your own, I'll help you. But if you keep controlling with your, you know, you're going to have a problem in your hands.
Let's come to the, you know, the most controversial topic for discussion, which is the Election Commission of India. The role which this body has played during this election.
Role model.
Well, it
role model for what you should not do.
Yeah, it has come under severe criticism. Can you just reflect a little bit on that?
I think
and then we'll go on to talk about EVN also.
You must have yourself reflected on it. Why do you ask me this question?
No, but you...
Who in this country does not know that they are the agents of this government? Who in this country does not know that they prepare the schedule of the elections in 2019, 2024 in accordance with the wishes of the BJP? You know, in one state, it will be 7 phases. In other states, it will be just in 1 phase. Right? Wherever they know they are in power, it will be done in no time. If they're not in power, they will do it in several phases. This has worked against them. Unfortunately, this time it's worked against them because the 5th, 6th and 7th phases were the worst for them. Right? So the Election Commission will not send notices to persons. They will not even send notices to parties. Right? And the Prime Minister goes for his, you know, dhyan and whatever he is doing in Kanyakumari. It's a spectacle.
But so what about the issue with regard to the EVMs? I mean, it was discussed at length in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had given a final judgment to it, saying that it cannot be tampered. ECI is calling it baseless allegations.
I have a different take on it.
And the results now actually, in a way, give clean chit to the EVM.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think that we are addressing the fundamental issue. Whether the EVM is tampered with or not tampered with is something I cannot prove. Whether it is tampered with or not tampered with, even the election commissioners don't know. Right? Nobody knows. It may not be tampered with. I start with the assumption that it's not tampered with. Okay? Then why should you use the EVM? I'll start with the assumption it's not tampered with. Why should you use the EVM? And why should you not use the EVM? My answer is very simple. See, the sacredness of the vote is fundamental to democracy.
Yeah.
Right? I vote for you. I go to the booth. On a ballot paper, I vote for you. It is put in a box, and I know it's going to be counted. But that signature cannot be changed. That tick cannot be changed. Okay? I go and vote in a machine. Machine shows me a little slip which falls. I don't know where that slip goes. Because it's never counted.
Okay. So right? there are
it's
loopholes.
Never counted.
Okay.
No, whether there's a loop, I don't know. But if the fundamentals of democracy and the sacredness of the vote is important, then one thing must be done, that vote must be counted. And I know that it has been counted. I don't want the machine to tell me that it's been counted. That's my fundamental premise. Right? Which is why no liberal country in the world allows it.
Okay.
There's the German Constitutional Court, which has held. We don't accept it. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the assumption that this machine is not tampered with is constitutionally, logically, and fundamentally wrong. Because there's no machine in the world which cannot be tampered with. So therefore, you start with an assumption that the machine can't be tampered with constitutionally, logically, incorrect. You say the machine counts your vote, you don't know. I cannot think of a democracy that proceeds on this assumption and then elects a representative. I fundamentally don't accept that logic. Now, whether it is, if Supreme Court tells me or Election Commission tells me, show me how it is tampered with. How do I know? How do I know?
But then so what you're suggesting is that there should be a transparent mechanism to count the votes.
Yes, absolutely. You should, that VVPAT slip should also be counted. Should also. What's the problem? If you take 75 days to hold an election, you can't take 2 or 3 more days to count the VVPAT?
Yeah.
What's the logic for that? No, it will take 2 days. So what? So what? It takes several more days in the United States. So I don't see the logic of the argument against it. That's my fundamental objection. Now, I asked one of the chief election commissioners this very question. How do you know? He says it's not tampered with. I asked him, how do you know? And that's Qureshi Sahab I asked. How do you know it's not tampered with? He said, we have consulted experts who say it can't be tampered with. I said, I've got 10 experts who says it can. What's your answer to that? So that means the election commissioners don't know whether it can be tampered with or not. They say it can't be tampered with because the experts have told them. But there are experts who tell us that they can be tampered with. And that evidence was given to court by way of affidavits, which was not looked at.
So then are you also faulting the Supreme Court judgment?
I'm not faulting anybody. You asked me a fundamental question, I've given you an answer. And that answer is not based on what the Supreme Court has done or what it should have done. It's my understanding how fundamental a vote is and how sacred it is to democracy.
Since we are talking about Supreme Court, sir, I just want to ask you a question related to the functioning of the courts, because you have said that, courts have been giving judgments in favor of the government.
Courts can give judgments in favor of the government.
But recently we have seen 1 or 2 verdicts that have, where the government has suffered a setback. So is it right,
when have I ever said that this court has given a judgment in favor of the government and therefore I'm against it? I've never said it. Have you ever heard me say that? That the court has given this judgment in favor of the government and therefore it's wrong. I've never said that in my entire 50 years of career. I've never said that. I can say the judgment is wrong. But I can't say that because it is in favor of the government, it's wrong. They're two different things, no? The judgment may be inherently flawed. ADM Jabalpur, it's given in favor of the government. There are so many judgments that are reviewed. Verdicts are set aside.
But then questions have actually been posed with regard to the independence of judiciary, especially in the last 10 years, with letters being written against, some judgments, with a lot of jurists coming into the picture and writing letters against the government and the Supreme Court. Then we also saw another group of jurists, who wrote in favor of the government. I think this kind of letter writing has
why has it happened only in the last 10 years?
That's exactly my question.
No, that's exactly why you should think about it. You should think about it. Why has it happened only in the last 10 years? Why has it not happened before? And you'll find the answer yourself when you ask yourself that question, right? Now, what happens is that every institution must have procedures, right, on which the stakeholders have confidence in. Okay? How is it that in some high courts, there are no issues? And how is it that in some high courts there are issues? Where there are no issues, the bar has never said anything. Where there are issues, the bar has raised a voice. So unfortunately, this is a problem that even the judiciary is aware of. Right? And if we criticize the judiciary, right, then it seems that we are unhappy because the judgment is in favor of the government. That's not it. That's not it at all.
It's more on a fundamental issue of
Fundamental
procedures.
issue, the judgment is so ex facie flawed that we think no reasonable man should have given that judgment. Right? Or the power of the roster is another matter which has been a matter of concern. Now, why is it that it was never so earlier? Right? So, and people not getting bail, their bail petition is not being heard. Judges keeping judgments reserved on bail, right, for two months.
Right.
Right.
Especially when you raise an urgency point
No,
in it.
no, tell me now. How does the legal fraternity deal with this? You render judgments every day that you must hear the bail petition immediately, decide it immediately, and then you don't hear it, and then people are just, I'll give you an example. What worries me as a matter of principle? You have a man who is convicted. His conviction is stayed by the High Court or the Supreme Court. He goes and files a nomination paper and he gets elected. So, a man who is convicted gets elected to Parliament or to the Assembly. You have another man who is charge sheeted, right? He can also file a nomination paper. And not only can he file a nomination paper, he can canvass for any candidate, his son, his daughter, whoever, right? He's free to canvass. You have a third person against whom there is no charge sheet, there is no conviction. There is only an allegation, but he's not allowed to canvass. You give me an answer to that. Forget about law. Give me a common sense answer to that. Does it sound good to you? That you keep him in jail for months? And in the midst of a national election. How do you explain it? How do you justify it? That's my worry. It's a worry on principles, not whether you decide in favor or against. Some judges hear 32 petitions.
Yeah, there's a lot of variation.
Some judges say, I will not hear. So what does that mean? It means that that's the problem. If you have such a large court, you don't expect uniformity.
True.
And if you don't have uniformity, then the bottom line is that you ask yourself the question, which court is the matter listed in? And your graph of hope will depend on the court in which it is listed, or the bench in which it is listed. That's not the best way that the highest court of the country must function. But it's not their fault. It's not their fault. You have such a large court because you have such a large country.
Right.
But therefore, you have to be even more careful to ensure that the confidence of the public in the judicial system is maintained, because that's the only bulwark against excessive use of power.
So you've also spoken about the need to have, to re-debate certain important legislations that were passed during, the last 5 years.
Again, for the same reason.
And you've also, warned against the implementation of the new criminal laws.
Absolutely.
Where you said there was no discussion at all in the parliament.
No discussion. There was, as you know, that there are hearings earlier. But the lawyers who stand for liberty and who stand for liberal values were not even called as witnesses. Ex-government lawyers were called and their opinion was taken.
And there is, of course, a talk that, these new laws are more draconian. They're going to be more draconian.
First of all, it's cut and paste. Many people don't understand. Right? And they are far more draconian. Right? But, as far as draconian laws are concerned, as far as any law is concerned, again, I have a basic perception on principle. You may have any law in this country. It can still be misused.
Okay.
It depends on who is implementing the law.
A
police officer, under the Code of Criminal Procedure, can do what he likes.
True.
Depending on how he implements the law. He can pick up a man, don't show that he has picked him up at this time. Keep him inside for 24 hours, right, or 48 hours, right, beat him up, right, and then show that he is picked up after 48 or 60 hours. Not show that he hasn't been picked up earlier. The law says that he should be picked up, in the time of his being picked up should be shown, no, in the daily diary. The Code of Criminal Procedure is not a draconian code.
It's the implementation where the problem
It's
lies.
the implementation. So you have the PMLA.
Yeah.
If the PMLA is used in the manner in which it was supposed to be used, we would have no problem.
In fact, I wanted to ask you this question, because PMLA and UPA were actually laws that were brought in by the earlier UPA government. And now to sit and criticize it, is it the right thing? So again, it
Well,
is
that's
about
also wrong. That's also a wrong question then, for the simple reason. First of all, it was not brought in by the UPA government.
So
The amendments were brought
amendments,
in.
yeah.
It was brought in by Vajpayee's government. It was not notified. It was supposed to be notified, and then in the meantime, Vajpayee's government fell in 2004. It had to be notified, but it is an international commitment.
Yeah, the PMLA
Right,
was
right.
international.
But the amendments that happened,
Yeah.
these amendments have happened in the context of how the PMLA can be used against certain elements. I think that some of these amendments were, according to me, I would have, wrong. And I think we should plead guilty to it. But the fact of the matter is that can't justify the absolute misuse of these laws against students, against academics, against journalists, against politicians, right? Now, you can't say you blame the UPA for bringing in the law amendments, and then you say, because you brought in the amendments, we have the right to use it the way we want. That's no justification.
But sir, the stringent twin bail test was always there in the law.
But it was a non-cognizable offense.
Yeah.
They interpreted it differently. And then Nariman's judgment was there.
Yes, which
Disregarded
was
it.
disregarded by
You
the
disregard.
government.
So
Yeah.
all this, you go into this quagmire of a debate when the simple solution is make the law consistent with the rule of law, with the fundamental rights that citizens have in this country. Right? Now you're questioning the man's right to speech. You say anything against any government, chief minister or a prime minister or some minister, you suddenly hold up. What nonsense is this? So that's the problem. The problem is that the men who rule are the men who decide how they will rule and decide how the law will be used.
So is that the concern even with the new penal code?
Well, absolutely. As far as PML is concerned, actually it stands for PM Ki Lal Aankh.
Okay.
That's what it stands for.
I see.
Right?
Yeah.
So whichever way he wants to use it, he uses it.
Okay.
And as far as the new law is concerned, that comes into effect on July 1.
Yes.
It's a cut and paste job. There's no thinking that's gone into it. And it's far more draconian. Now you can keep a man, for 90 days or 60 days without bail. Right?
Right.
And your
Even
police custody can extend. So all those problems are there. So I've already, in my press briefing this morning, made a request that this law should not be allowed to be.
So as an eminent lawyer, will you reach out to Mr. Naidu and Mr. Nitish Kumar to at least have a relook at this?
No, I don't think that I as an individual should do that. But if the president, as president of the Bar Association, if I take the bar into confidence, and the bar wants me to do that, right, I will write to the government. I don't think I'll reach out to either Chandrababu Naidu or to Nitish Kumar. I don't think it's right.
So your opinion as far as Prime Minister Narendra Modi is concerned, at one point of time, till a few days back, he was heading a brute majority government. Now he will be heading a coalition government.
Right.
How different or difficult would it be for him?
I don't know. I think the time will tell how difficult or easy it will be. But any coalition governments are always difficult to run because you have to take into account the opinions of others. And from what I know of Modi ji, he is not used to that. Of taking the opinion of others. So he may find it difficult, but then he's a very smart politician also. So he may well sort of, he does, give and take and everything. right? So he's capable.
So you suggest that he is capable of managing it well?
He may well be. I mean, he's a very smart politician. I don't think that he is a good prime minister, but he's a smart politician.
Okay, my last question to you would be, sir, you're re-entering the bar politics because your filing of the nomination led to a lot of, I mean, the entire scenario in Supreme Court bar was very different this time. And the fact that you came back after a very long gap.
22 years.
22 years. What made you get into bar politics all
I didn't
over
want to,
again?
quite frankly. For the last 3 years, I've been senior members of the bar and others have been trying to persuade me, also junior members. The reason is that I didn't want to get into bar politics after having been in national politics. But then, of course, just things happened at that time.
But this time it was a very divisive campaign also in the bar elections. I mean, you of course know about it, how there were groupism happening, how messages were
Not from my side.
No, not from your side. I'm generally talking about.
That's all right. That's all right. Point is that bar unfortunately has become politicized. And I've been president of the bar on 3 previous occasions.
Yeah.
The maximum you can be is 4 times. So after this, I can't be. When I was there, it was not a politicized bar because we never brought politics into the functioning of the bar and the functioning of courts. We may have our political views, but that's outside of court. And if you notice that I have argued so many political cases, I've never brought politics. Irrespective of who I stand for. It's only law. Now, unfortunately, we've had people in the past, I don't want to blame anybody, which has resulted in the bar being divided on political lines. And I think much of it has got to do with the Bar Council of India.
Yeah.
Right. I hope that in the course of this year, I can somehow stop that happening and get the bar united.
In fact, I also think that, bar bodies have always had a very vocal, independent voice in the society. And they have managed to create narratives. Do you think there has been decline in that?
Absolutely. There's a very, very, very unfortunate decline in the way that we as members of the bar have conducted ourselves. Quite frankly, most of us, and this is, I criticize myself as well, are less concerned about the affairs of the bar and the importance of the role of the bar in nation building, right? The bar anywhere in the world, in liberal countries, is at the forefront of change, right? We are far from being at the forefront of change. We embrace the status quo. We have embraced the status quo, whatever the status quo is. And we are more interested in going to court and arguing our cases and going home and preparing for the next day than thinking about why we are here, why are we members of the bar, what is our role as lawyers, what do we need to do for the nation. I think we've all forgotten about that. That's sad.
So there is a lot of talk about government interference in the functioning of the judiciary, especially the appointments. So as a president of the SCBA, what is going to be?
I have really no role to play in it. What I can say is that this system of collegium system is not working well at all. Right? And I'm very, very worried about the government taking over this responsibility. So both systems, I think, have not resulted in the kind of appointments that we want in court. And you've seen examples of a judge saying he's always been part of the RSS, another judge saying that he was in touch with the BJP while he was in office. This is not something that has ever happened in the past. And this is because of the nature of the recruitment, appointment of judges to the higher judiciary, which is extremely flawed, according to me. Now, we as members of the bar can't ask the Chief Justice, right, to do things in a particular way in matters of appointment. That's with the collegium. But I think that the collegium itself should introspect, because I don't want to say this, but we know exactly what happens within. And that's not the best for the judicial system.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us and for having such a candid conversation from politics to bar politics.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you
Always
so
a
much.
pleasure.